Hello everyone, good morning. I'm sharing my screen. So yes, we will start off with security in HCM Cloud today. I'll log into one of the instances that I've given you access to. And I'm logging in as a HCM implementation user. And as I mentioned yesterday, security in a Fusion Cloud application is controlled on the basis of roles assigned to the user, right? So it's what you have in Fusion Cloud application is a role-based access control, meaning when you log in as a particular user, what you can see within the application and what you can do within it, what data you can access, everything will be determined by the roles assigned to the user. And where do you assign roles to a user? You have to do it from tools. From tools, you have Security Console. And from the Security Console, yes, you can create users and manage their roles. And you can do a lot more things other than these two from a Security Console. And this Security Console access will not be available for everyone. It will be available for only the super users. There is a specific role. There is a specific role called called Application Implementation Consultant, and that role gives you access to this particular screen or to this particular navigation option under Tools. Okay, so first let's go in there, create a user, and we'll do a hands-on exercise today to understand how security all works in Fusion HCM Cloud. So there are a few navigation options. First, we'll get into users, and we'll add a new user account. Okay, when you add a new user account, see normally when you you have an option to add user account here, right? And you click on it, and you can create one user at a time. And this is not what we normally do in real time. We will create users this way only for the implementation team. And that too for implementation team, for some of the members, there must be an employee attached. But for most of the implementation users, there need not be a requirement to have a person attached. So usually when you load in employees into cloud application, so you load in employees into cloud application, right? And not you, it will be done by technical consultant. It will be done by technical consultant as part of migration. So they bring in employees from their current system into Fusion Cloud application. It could be their EBS hardware application or any other application. And when employees are loaded into cloud application, users will be automatically created. You have an option to load in the user information as well, with what details user needs to be created. And that's how users get into the application. And we will use add user account and create users only for the implementation team members. When I say implementation team members, like you and me, when implementation project starts, we will have to configure the modules and release the system for client to use, right? So only us, for us, the account might be created this way, and we will do the configurations. We will see the implementation project through its life cycle, and we move on. And to create a user account, yes, you need to add in a first name, last name. Last name is a mandatory column, username, password, and you have to confirm it. And yeah, let's type in some information here. Okay, let's say I want to create it as HCM. Well, let me see if you have a user called HCM.user1 in this application. Yeah, we don't have it. So I'll go ahead and add a new user account, and I say HCM, and I'll enter the last name as user1. And the moment I enter first name and last name, and I tab out of it, you see that username is defaulted to HCM.user1. So where did this come from? And what is driving this username in the backend? Whenever you create a user, you select a user category, and at the moment a default is selected, you can create it from the user category section here. Let me go back to that screen and show you where you have those options. If I go to the same security console access, security console screen from here, if you go into user categories, there will be a default user category that application comes with. So this is out of the box default category. And within that, there are few things that a user category determines. And one among them is a username generation rule. And what do you see in there? You see that there is a generation rule called first name dot last name for username. And this is why when you have entered a username, first name as HCM, last name as user1, what's the username that is generated? It's HCM.user1. Right? And you do have some more options that you can choose from. If you click on edit, you see a drop down. You see that there are a few more options that you could use. Some clients would like to use their employee number, might want their employees to log in with their employee number itself as username. Some clients would like to use a first letter in their first name followed by their last name. And some clients would like to use email. And you also have, so if you probably select something like email here, and remember on user definition, email is not something mandatory. So if user doesn't enter anything here and click on save and close, how should the user creation fail, or should user creation should go through with a default generation rule? So that's what will be determined by this. System will generate a username automatically whenever this generation rule fails, meaning you pick a criteria here which is blank. Okay, so and apart from just a username, there are a few more things that user category also determines. Like there will be a password policy attached. So you're creating a new user now, right? So after how many days the password should expire, and before that password expires, how many days before the password expiry you want to send a reminder. So you have all such options here. Okay, password expiration, when do you want to send out a warning, and how complex the password should be, and should a user be able to use the same password or not. So you see this disallow last password is not ticked. What does that mean? That means you can use the same password that you have used earlier. Meaning if I set the password as welcome@123, W in caps, after 90 days, it will expire. After 80 days, I get a warning message saying that, boss, your password is going to expire. I don't act on it. It expires in 90 days. And when I sign into application on 90th day, it gives me an option to reset the password. And at that point, I can set the password to the same value because this is not ticked. Disallow last password is not ticked. Okay. And whenever you create an account, right? So I'm creating a user account now. If you key in an email ID here, that email a welcome email will be sent from Fusion applications to this email ID. And of course, there must be a content defined for that email, right? So what should be the content of that email? So those things will be available in the notifications here. Okay. So if you go into notifications tab, you will see various templates for those emails. Okay. So if you see when you try to sign in on the sign in page, you have a forgot password option, right? If you click on it, what email you should receive, what should be the content of it, whenever a new account is created. So when a new account is created, this will be the email that will be sent out. So if you click on new account template, you could see that it says, dear first name, last name, congratulations, your account has been created successfully, and so on. Okay, so these are things that a default user or a user category determines. Okay, username generation rule, password policy, and the notifications. And if you go into users, you will be able to see all the users to which this default user category is assigned, or the users created with or by selecting default user category here. And after we create this user, this HCM.user1 will also show up in this list. Okay, and now let's enter the username and password. Username is derived. I'll set the password as welcome123, welcome@123, W in caps. And then let's try to add a role here. And yes, we are creating a user account here, and we can tag this user to a specific person. So you have employees loaded in the application. And if you want to tag this user to a specific employee, you can do that by clicking on this drop down. you say worker, and you can search for an employee. You can search for an employee, and you can tag this user to a specific employee if you want. Okay, there would be some users, for some users, yes, there would be a requirement that the user should be tagged to an employee. Okay, so if you go to procurement, not related to HCM, but yeah, if you want to access some screens as a buyer, then you have a requirement that you should be registered as an employee, or your user account should be tagged to a worker. But usually that is not a mandatory requirement. So you can create standalone users without having them linked to employees. But usually most of the end users, they would be registered. They would be the employees of the clients, right? If they are end users, and they would have a person associated with them. And how will those users be created? Not this way. You will not sit down and create 10,000 users or 1 lakh users this way. They will be created when the employees are loaded automatically. And now I've created this user now, right? If I click on save and close, yes, if you try to log in as hcm.user1 from a different browser, okay, so if you try to sign in as hcm.user1 from a different browser, you won't see anything in there because yes, we created this user, but there are no roles assigned to this, right? And let's talk about roles now. So if you click on add role here, there are different types of roles available. Okay, there are different types of roles available. And when you, before I talk about roles, if you go into this, go back to our home page. Okay, so here we have logged in as, a HCM implementation user. And if I go into, and since this user has many roles attached to him, we can see many groups, and under each group or module, we can see individual work areas or pages. And if you go into in any individual group, say for example, let's go into my client groups. And if you go into a new person, if you click on new person, you see that there are a list of tasks that you can perform. So when you try to hire a new person, there are a variety of workers that you can hire, and hire an employee, pending worker, contingent worker, etc. Right? So you see all of these are nothing but tasks that you can perform in an application. Right? These are nothing but tasks you can perform in an application or from this particular screen. And these tasks are nothing but privileges in HCM Cloud. So the way security works is you have a privileges in HCM Cloud. Let me open up this PPT. Okay, so if you have to determine security, or if you have to define security in one single statement, a security will control who can do what on which set of data. Okay, so if you are an employee, if you have an employee role associated to your attached to your user account, what you should be able to do, yes, you should have access to all the basic screens that employees should have access to. Okay, and he should be able to view the pay slips. That's one example. But whose pay slip he should be able to view? Only your pay slip. Only your pay slip. Okay, and if you if you take the case of other roles, so if you hire someone as a human resource specialist, what that person should be able to do, he should be able to hire or rehire employees. And there are a lot many other things that he could do. I've just listed on few of them to make it easy for you guys to understand. And you will also attach a data set to a role. Okay, so when you say human resource specialist, when you hire an employee and you make him human resource specialist, I'll show you how you can make how you can do that. So what he should be able to do, he should be able to hire or rehire employees and a lot many other things. And you also determine, or the roles that you assign to a person will determine what he can do, and it will also control on which data set he'll be able to do. See, normally when you hire a human resource specialist, he should probably be able to access or manage employees of a particular country, usually, or a particular legal entity, right? So you can control who can do what on which set of data with the help of roles. And if you take example from another application, maybe a GL application or a finance application, if you hire someone as a general accountant, he should be able to manage journals in a specific ledger. Okay, so how do we achieve this? How do we control the who part, what, and which part? So the security framework has three key elements in it. So so whatever you see here, whatever you see when you get into individual work areas are nothing but tasks that a person needs to perform or can perform, right? And these tasks are nothing but privileges. At the most granular level of the security, what you have are privileges, and these privileges can be directly related to the tasks that you see on screen. Okay, so you see 6 tasks here. There would be a privilege for each of these tasks created by Oracle in the backend. So what Oracle has did is it has created thousands of privileges, seeded privileges. What are some of the examples? Hire an employee, rehire employee, add a worker assignment, and there are thousands of privileges like them. So if you work it out from the other way around, see, when you hire someone as a human resource specialist, see, normally when you hire someone, you hire him to perform a specific job, right? You hire a person to perform a specific job. And if you hire a person to perform, or if you hire someone as a human resource specialist, okay, you expect him to, you hire him into that job. And as part of his job, he will have to perform many duties, right? So as part of your daily activities, you might, since most of you are already working, as part of your job, you will also have to do multiple activities, right? Or multiple duties. So a job role, so for that, a human resource specialist to be able to perform his duties. So how do we make a person human resource analyst? So what we do is to the users, you assign roles here, right? You assign roles here from the security console. You assign a role called human resource specialist. And that assigning this job role to a person makes that particular user an human resource specialist. And yes, once you make him human resource specialist by assigning his job, by assigning him this job role, you expect that user to perform certain duties. And there can be hundreds of duties that he might have to perform. Some of them might be daily duties, and some of them might be monthly or bi-weekly duties. And for this guy to perform those duties, you need to have, so what Oracle did is to each job role, whatever duties that guy needs to perform, so those duty roles have been created in the backend, and all those duty roles are assigned to the job role. Since you are a human resource specialist, you are responsible for employee hire, you are responsible for employee termination, you are responsible for thousands of other duties as well. So as a job, you have to perform some duties, and to perform that duty, how do they perform the duty? Say, for example, one of the key duty of human resource specialist is to hire an employee. And how will he do it? He will be able to do it only when he can see the tasks related to hiring or rehiring employees within the application, right? So what Oracle did is, so to under duty role, so whatever tasks are required, access to whatever tasks are required, those tasks are nothing but privileges, right? So what tasks or privileges required to perform this particular duty, all those privileges would be assigned to it. So it usually works in this direction, not in this direction. But to make it easy for you guys to understand, I've explained it this way. Okay. So when you hire a person, you hire him into a specific job. And as part of his job, he will have to perform a number of duties. And to perform those duties, he will have to access, he should be able to access tasks in the application. And to achieve this framework, what Oracle did, it has created thousands of privileges. And a privilege is nothing but a task that you see in the application. And those tasks are grouped into duty roles. A single privilege can be part of multiple duty roles. And those duty roles, relevant duty roles, are grouped together and assigned to a job role called human resource specialist. Okay, so this is a backbone of the security framework. Okay, so you have privileges, which are the least granular level, nothing but tasks. And those privileges are grouped into duty roles. Duty roles are assigned to job roles. And you have a many-to-one relationship here. You can have many privileges assigned to duty role, many duty roles assigned to job role, and many job roles can be assigned to users here. Okay, many job roles can be assigned to users. And this is a basic framework. And there are a variety of roles available in ERP Cloud, in Fusion Cloud. Let me show you the roles. Okay, so these are the roles available in Fusion Cloud application. So job roles is what we have talked about so far. Okay, so when you want someone to perform a specific job, you assign him a job role. And for that person to be able to access a certain data, you need to create a data role and you need to assign it to him. Okay, data roles control the access of a data or which a data instance set that a user can access. And you know the duty roles, right? So you have privileges attached to duty roles and duty roles attached to job roles. And for those job roles, you make someone a human resource specialist. They will not automatically get access to any data. For that job role, you need to assign a data role so that that particular person whom you have assigned a human resource specialist, yes, if that person needs to act on employees in US1 legal entity, you will create a data role with access only to that particular legal entity, and you assign that data role as well to the user. And apart from these three, privileges, duty roles, and job roles, and data roles define what data a person will be able to access. Apart from all these roles, you have another type of role called abstract role. And there are two classic examples of abstract roles available in the application. What are they? They are employee and a line manager. See, it doesn't matter whom you hire in the application, right? So you might hire 10 employees to perform 10 different roles. So you might hire employees to perform 10 different jobs, but all of them, so you might hire a line manager, you might hire a payroll administrator, you might hire a HR manager, you might hire a HR analyst, but all of these users or all these employees whom you hire into different job roles, end of the day, they should have access to certain basic screens, right? So they should probably have a role called employee attached so that they can access self-service pages on the application, right? In the application. So such type of roles that you assign to most of the users, which gives them access to the basic screens that they need to have, those are called abstract roles. What are some of the classic examples of abstract roles? Line manager role or employee role. Employee is the common one that you assign, right? So it doesn't matter whom you hire or into what job role you hire a person, whether it's HR analyst or HR manager or a specialist or payroll administrator, you need to assign a role called employee so that that guy will have access to the me section and few other sections in the application. So those are called abstract roles. Now that we know a little bit about roles, we will first assign an abstract job role in the application. We will assign an abstract job role to start off with called employee to this user, and we'll try to sign in as this user from a different browser. So you come into roles and you search for employee role. And when you search for employee role, ignore about the other roles. Those roles also start with employee. But if you look at the first three roles, I'm searching for employee role, but I could see three flavors of it. Right, so you might be wondering why do we have three roles for a specific role? Okay, why do we have three entries for a specific role? And the first point that you guys need to remember is you should always pick up and use the role that starts with or underscore. And there is at the end of the role, you will usually have the role type in it. So if it's an abstract role, you have underscore abstract. If it's a job role, you have underscore job at the end. Because this is a specific naming convention that Oracle follows. You should always pick up and use the roles that start with Aura underscore. That's point number one. And if you ask, why do we have these duplicate roles? As per the Oracle documentation, what they say is this particular role has come from a previous upgrade. So when this Fusion application has been upgraded from a previous release, these roles have got created and they still exist in a system. Yes, you don't need to worry about them and you should not use them. And then you might ask, why do we have a duplicate copy again for that? And the reason for this is, like when Oracle didn't initially give the copy roles. Okay, so what clients used to do was the implementation users or end users, whoever it might be. So there's nothing that stops you in the application from editing seeded roles. Okay, so if you when you assign this employee role to the user, that user will get access to say 10 screens by default. But a client has a requirement that their employees should have access to only 8 screens, not the other 2 screens. Then what you can do, there are 2 approaches you can take there. You can edit the employee itself and take off those 2 privileges so that they don't see those, so that their employees don't see those tasks. Or you can make a copy of this role. I'll show you, we'll talk about it in tomorrow's session in detail, like how to customize a seeded role, etc. And you can make a copy of this role, take out those 2 privileges and assign that custom XX employee role to your users rather than the employee role. But sometimes clients will do the first approach, will go with the first approach for end users, which should never be the case if you talk about best practices. And when so they start editing seeded job roles, and they reach a point where they want to go back to the original definition of an employee. But they have made so many changes that they don't remember what all they have taken out and what all roles they have added to the role definition, and they are not in a position to go back. And what they used to do is they used to raise SRs with Oracle, asking them to let them know the original definition of employee role. So for that reason, to avoid all those SRs, what Oracle did is, okay, boss, I'll give you 2 roles. If by mistake you edit one role, you at least have a copy role, refer to it and correct yourself the role. Okay, so just as a backup, you have an employee copy role. That's the reason behind seeing these three entries for each role. You might not see always 3 entries for each role. For some role, you might see only 1 entry. For some roles, you might see 2. For some roles, you might see 3. But if someone asks you what's the reason, yeah, this is the logic behind it. And what should you always use? You should always use a role that starts with Aura underscore. Pick it up and add role membership. We have added this particular user, right? And you click on save and close. So we are hiring this person. Also, we hired this HCM user 1, and maybe we are hiring him as a human resource specialist. I want him to play the job of a human resource specialist. But end of the day, he is also an employee, right? So at the moment, I've just assigned employee role to this particular user. And let's see what this guy will be able to access when he logs into an application. So we have created a user and we have assigned a role to it, right? Now let's try to log into this application from a different browser. Let me get the password for this user, guys, for this instance. Just give me a minute. Okay, I'll try to log into the same instance from a different browser. Sorry, this is not the one. I don't need to sign in as HCM IMPL1 or HCM implementation user. I want to log in as a new user that I have created just now, right? HCM.user1. And what's the password that we have entered? It's welcome@123 WN caps. And let's sign in. And let's save the password. And what do you see? You see that this particular user has got access to a very basic screens that every employee should have access to. So every employee should have access to their Me section. They should be able to see their information directly, and they should be able to see their pay slips, see the time absences, etc. Right? So all these things should be available to the employee by default, or every employee by default rather. And if required, he should also be able to raise some purchase requisitions to procure some stationery. And maybe if required, he might also probably have to go to reports and analytics work area and run few reports. So a seeded employee role given by Oracle will give a user access to 4 groups. And within these groups, it gives them access to a certain pages within that particular group. Right? So if you take a case of me, it gives them access to few screens. And in the case of other groups also, yes, this particular user do get access to some pages. So what does this mean? This means this clearly indicates that the role assigned to the user will determine what he can see or what groups he can see. And within the group, what pages he can see. Remember, in tools, there are not just 3, there are plenty more pages in there. But still, this user is able to see only 3. Okay. Now, we realized that we had this person as a human resource specialist. Yes, if we assign employee role, this is what typically happens. So if you use a standard employee role given by Oracle, that the users on the client side will have access to, or will get access to, all the screens that you see now. Okay, they will get access to all these options. But client says that, yeah, everything is fine, boss. But just take out 1 or 2 options from this. Or if he might ask you to add 1 or 2 more pages under a group that a user should be able to access. Okay, that would be the common requirements that you get. Okay, so yes, the clients are okay with 99% of the employee role. They are absolutely fine with it, but they want to take out 1 or 2 pages from this, and they want to add 1 or 2 more pages, so that when you assign that employee role, so all their employees should get access to 99% of this, plus 2 more tasks, minus 2 more tasks, or two different tasks. In such case, what you typically do in such cases, you will, as an implementation specialist, you will make a copy of this. So sometimes functional consultant implements security, sometimes a technical consultant does it. What you do is, in such case, you will not sit down and create employee role from scratch. So this employee role has, let's say, 100 privileges, out of which I need to take out 2 privileges, and I need to add 3 more privileges to it. So is it easy to make a copy of this role, take out 2 privileges and add 3 privileges? Or does it make sense to sit down and create an employee role from scratch, figuring out what those 100 privileges are? So we usually take the first approach. We make a copy of this seeded role. We do not edit the seeded roles. Okay, so even though you can, you're not supposed to. You should not edit the employee role, and you should not take out those 2 privileges, add those 3 privileges, because when instance gets upgraded every 3 months, or when some patch is applied, there is a chance that the Oracle might make changes to the seeded roles, and in which case you would lose the changes that you have done. So in the next upgrade, or when a patch is applied, this employee might go back to its original definition of 100 privileges, not 100 minus 2 plus 3. Okay, so that's why we make a copy of these roles, make a custom role, and in that custom role, you take out those 2 privileges that you don't need, and you add those additional 3 privileges, and you ask your consultant. And what we do, we will assign that custom seeded role, XX employee role, to the employees on the client side, so that they exactly see the screens that their employees would like to have access to. That's point number 1. And now we have had this employee as a human resource specialist, right? So let's make him a human resource specialist. How do you make a user, how do you make him a human resource specialist? You can do it by assigning him a job role. So you click on edit, and you add a role, and you search for a human resource specialist. And again, the same story repeats here. I'm not going to talk about why you're seeing 3 entries here. But what you have to do, you have to pick up a role that starts with Aura underscore that ends with job. You pick it up and you add role membership. And you see two roles are assigned now. I save and close. So I've made this user a human resource specialist now by assigning him a job role called human resource specialist. Now let's go back into the application and let's try to refresh it. Okay, sign out and sign in. So at the moment, user has got access to 4 groups, right, as an employee. But you would see that now that he is a human resource specialist, he would have access to a few more screens and he can perform few more activities in the application. Okay, so what do you see? You see that this particular user can now play the role of a human resource specialist. So he's got access to a few more screens than what he has got access to earlier. He has got access to my client groups. And within this my client group, you have a variety of actions you can perform in HCM, right? So you can manage persons, you have a lot of quick actions that you can perform as a human resource specialist now. You can hire an employee, transfer or terminate an employee, and you can manage their assignments as well. So at the moment I added a job role to this particular user, this guy has become or has got access to those screens now, right? So these are maybe the duties that he might have to perform. And when you get into those duties, you will also be able to see the tasks or privileges assigned to that duty role. Okay, so that's a basic thing that you need to be aware of. So the roles. So the moment we assign a human resource specialist job role, this guy is able to see the screens. Okay, so you thought, let's assume that you are setting up security for the first time and you have pinged this user and told him that, hey guy, I've set up a user for you in the Fusion application, and this is your username and this is your default password. Go ahead and log in and do your work. And that person logs into the application. And he would be happy to see that, yes, he probably have access to most of the screens that he needs. And let's say he has to manage a specific person. Maybe he has to change something on a specific person, maybe add an assignment or do something on a specific employee. So he comes here, maybe he has to update something on Curtis. And he searches for an employee called Curtis here. And what does he see? He doesn't see any employees being pulled here. So this means, yes, this person has got access to the screens. He has access to the screens or he has access to the functionality, but he does not have access to the data yet. Okay, so you've made him a human resource specialist, meaning he will be able to perform all these tasks. But on what data set he will be able to perform these tasks is something that you need to handle explicitly by assigning him a data role. Okay, so when you assign him a job role, those jobs would have duty roles and those duty roles will have privileges, right? So those options will show up in the user interface as the info tiles. And within the info tiles, if you click on those work areas or info tiles, you will be able to see those tasks as well. But they won't be able to access, or they won't get access to any data set by default. You have to do it explicitly. And let's assume that this is a super user, and this user should have access to everything that is there in the application. Okay, so in a single instance, you might have multiple legal entities configured. Okay, so when a client implements Oracle Fusion HCM Cloud, they would have a single instance, and in that instance itself, you will implement a HCM for all the countries, for US, UK, India, or whatever is required. Okay, so those enterprise structures, everything would be configured, or workforce structures would be configured in the application for all those required countries. But let's assume that this person is a super user and he should have access to all the data in the application. In such case, what you can do, first of all, how do you grant access of data to the user? You do it by creating a data role. So what you can do is, I've also listed down the steps that you need to follow in here in this particular page. Okay, in slide number 5. And we are performing these actions now. Not exactly in the same order, and not only those points, we're talking a bit more or a lot more on the fly. Okay, so what we need to do is we need to assign a data. We need to assign or grant data access to this particular user. How do we do it? To do that, there are multiple ways to access those screens or where you can grant data access from. So you can go into My Client Groups, and from My Client Groups, you can go into Workforce Structures. This is one way to go in there. And when you go into Workforce Structures, you see all the options related to setting up workforce structures. And if you scroll down a little bit, so we'll talk about these options in detail when we get into core HR. But what do you see here? You see that there is an option to control or to create a security profile. And you do have an option to attach those security profiles to a data role. So what you need to do is you need to first create a security profile, and you have an option to grant data access to the users by many criteria. Okay, so you can restrict the data access of a user by organization or by position or by LDG, by country, right? So you have a number of security profiles that you can create to grant data access or to restrict the data access to only to that particular set or data set. Okay, so you can create a security profile, and in the security profile, you mention what a particular guy should be able to access based on what criteria. And then you assign that security profile to a data role, and you attach that data role or you assign that data role to the user. Okay, that's a normal criteria. So what we do is we will first, and what Oracle did is it has given some seeded security profiles here. So there will be a seeded security profile called View All for all these security profiles. So what does that mean is you have a security profile called View All, organization security profile called View All organizations, position security profile called View All positions. So for each security profile, there is a default security profile given by Oracle called View All countries. So you see six or seven options here. For each of these security profiles, there is a default profile given here. So we will first go ahead and create a data role using all these default profiles, which by default gives a user access to all the data sets. Okay. So what you can do is you can go into data roles and security profiles here. This is one way to get down to this screen. Another alternate way to get down to this screen is, even though it's confusing, I want to show you two different navigation options now itself, so that you guys know all the possibilities. You click on the drop down. You can go into setup and maintenance, and this is basically called as FSM screen. And you click on the drop down, and you select a module called a workforce deployment. Right. And if you scroll down, you have an option called security, users and security. You click on that functional area, and that will show you only the required tasks by default, and you can change it to all tasks. And that will also show you all the tasks that you have seen in a previous navigation option. So in the workforce structure, you have seen a set of tasks, right, or security profiles. You see all of them here as well. And you have an option called Assign Security Profiles to Role. And if you click on this Assign Security Profiles to Role, you do have an option to create a new data role from here. Let's try to create a new data role, and we'll call it as UG HCM or data access role. And I want this data role to be applied on the seeded head human resource specialist job role. Okay, sometimes you can you could also you could also apply a data role on a custom job role as well. But I don't want to confuse you guys customizing both of them at the same time. So I'm granting a data access to a seeded job role. Okay, but you could also pick up a custom job role here as well. And what do? You click on next. And it shows that so remember the explanation that I've given for 3 job roles with the same name showing up. When you search for employee, there are 3 roles that have shown up, right? And this is the reason that is given behind seeing those multiple entries. So what does it say? It says that another job role with the same name exists and is included in the data roles. So ensure that you pick up a correct job role. So what that means is Oracle wants you to pick up a job role that starts with Aura underscore. And it also explains why you are seeing those multiple job roles. So you click OK. And if you go back one step, it doesn't let you. In the security criteria tab, you need to assign a security profile for each of these options, and these security profiles will determine what data set the user gets access to. And what we do is, to start off with, we will assign a view all options for all the security profiles, meaning the user gets to see all the data. Okay, we are not restricting data by any criteria now. Okay, we are assigning a seeded security profile, seeded security profiles to all the options, and we are creating a data role. Okay, so I'm creating a data role with all the with granting him all the data access to all the organizations, all positions, etc. No restriction at all. And if you click on next, what it will do is it will take you to a train page, and you will see all these options: organization, profile, country, LDG. So you will see all these options as individual stops in those train page. So if I click on next, you will see those. You will see all those security profiles again showing up here: organization, position, country, LDG, right? So whatever you have seen in the security profile screen, so you assign a value there, right? So you will have a review pages for each one of them. We will not do anything. Just click on next, next, and next in these screens. Okay, so it just shows you what is the security profile and what's the criteria you entered for that particular security profile, just to make sure that you have done what you exactly need. Okay, and after you go into the last tab, okay, you have an option to review the data role that you have created, and you can submit it. And after you submit it, you can assign this data role to the user now. UG HCM data access role to the user. And once you assign this data access role to the user, or data role to the user, what will happen? That user will now be able to access all the data of all the legal entities or everything that is there in the application. Okay, so let it get saved. And while it gets saved, let's go into the security console. Okay, so data role is created now. And now you go into security console, search for HCM.user1, and assign him that data role. Search for the data access role and add it. And now that we have assigned a data role to this particular user, this guy will now be able to see all the data. And now you go back to the previous screen, or in this session, I've logged in as HCM user1. And if I try to search for an employee with name Curtis, click on one here. So sign out and sign in again. Sometimes the changes gets reflected without having to sign out and sign in. Sometimes you will have to do that explicitly. And you go into person management now. What do you see? You see that this employee or this user or this human resource specialist has got access to all the data now. So he can go about doing his job. But is this what is actually done? So sometimes in very rare instances, you might need super users who should have access to all the data in the application. But in most of the cases, 99.99% of the cases, a human resource specialist should have access to only a data of a specific legal entity that he is working in. Okay, so now this user has got access to all the data, right? But tomorrow we will see how to restrict this data access to a specific legal entity. So you see that when I search for Curtis, I've got 3 employees for Curtis. One of them is from New Zealand, 2 of them are from US. So tomorrow we'll see how to restrict this particular user to be able to manage only the employees in US one legal entity and not all the legal entities. Okay, and there are a lot more things to cover in security, guys. So we will discuss it over the next few days. But any doubts in what we have covered in today's session?
Hey, hi Prasad. So my doubt is like if we have created one user,
That's right. Yeah.
and allow him HR
Yeah.
role,
HR
and the
role.
second one is abstract role, and the third one is.
Employee. We made him employee and we made him a human resource specialist. Yeah.
So is it necessary to allow him abstract role? Can you
Yeah.
please explain again?
Yeah. That is basic requirement, right? So he should be able to every user that you hire, or you create a user for him in the instance only when he is an employee. Or if you're hiring a specific person as an employee, and if you expect him to be able to access certain screens like this, he should be able to have those self-service pages, right? Like me section, procurement, etc. So assigning an employee role is a must. Abstract role like employee and line manager is what you do for most of the users.
So whenever we are creating user, is it necessary to allow him this role?
Yes, you can go ahead and blindly assign him this role. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's perfect. Yeah.
Yeah. Any other questions, guys, from anyone else? Okay. So this will be all the topics that we're going to talk about in security is interlinked, guys. Please do not miss a session. So tomorrow and day after tomorrow also, we will be talking about security. There are a lot more things to cover. So please do not miss a session. If you miss a session, that's absolutely fine, but ensure that you go through the recording before you dial in for tomorrow's session. Because tomorrow we will tee off from where we have left off today. I'm not going to talk about job role privileges or the security backbone again. Okay. Thank you, guys. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.